Welcome. My name is Błażej Kotełko. I work as a PM at Microsoft here in the Copenhagen Development Center, where Business Central is being developed. And today I will talk to you about what's new in Power Platform integration with Business Central. We have a couple of topics. I will start with a little bit of an intro for you to remember and refresh your memory about our integration with Power Platform. We'll talk about Power Automate features, a little bit about Power BI and Dataverse Virtual Tables updates. So let's start with Power Platform. This is a rich tool set of different components that you can use to build integrations with Business Central and other systems. And depending on who you are and what you need, you might use different tools. If you are a data analyst, you will be using Power BI. You will build reports and dashboards using Power BI and view them in Business Central. If you are a citizen developer, if you want to extend Business Central, connect to other systems, you will probably use Power Apps to build some additional apps, maybe Power Automate to build automation workflows, and Power Virtual Agents to build your bots or plug them into Teams, for instance. And then if you are integrating with Dataverse, especially if you have other systems running on Dataverse, you will be using Dataverse and our Dataverse Virtual Tables capabilities. What we have in Business Central in the integration with those components is composed from different elements. In Power BI, we have our built-in reports. We have template apps on AppSource, and we have also the connector where you can build your own. We will talk about that a little bit more in a moment. For the core Power Platform integration and our connector, you can build Power Apps, Power Automate, and Virtual Agents, as I mentioned, and all of those can work together and exchange data and flows. If you're building Dataverse Virtual Tables, Dataverse systems using Dataverse Virtual Tables, our data is natively in Dataverse, and then you can build model-driven apps or Canvas apps. So you also will be building actually Power Apps. This is all in the same family of Power Platform. We also have another component, which is a data sync component, where our data is synced specifically to Dataverse, but most likely for other Dynamics 365 systems. I'm not talking about that part today. There is another session in this launch event where my colleague Ivan Koletic is talking about improvements in that Dataverse data sync. So please tune into that session too. So let's start with Power Automate and changes that we have done. I would like to begin with explaining three different ways that you can use Power Automate to build your flows, build your automation. We have approval workflows and templates that are already in the product and already are listed as templates in Power Automate. Those have been improved, but they already exist. We have also automated workflows where you can build your own flows that react on specific business events or external events and process data. And that already also existed as a capability. And then you have instant flows or manual flows that you can build in Power Automate. And of course, you were able to build those flows in Power Automate before, but now you will be able to also see them and expose them in Business Central in a very powerful way. We'll talk about that in a moment. Several changes in our connector that help with all of those three methods or three different flows and giving you building blocks to build your flows. First is the Power Automate and Find Records feature. This feature has been released several months ago, so it's not completely new. You might have been using it already, or you maybe have heard about it. There are some partners already building solutions using that powerful capability. This is essential for anything that connects data from different systems and Business Central when you are getting an input either from the user or another system and you need to find some data in Business Central. it is now much easier than before. So please get yourself familiar with this capability. Another change that we have introduced in this release is the full support for header and lines in Power Automate and Power Apps. That unblocks scenarios where you need to manipulate complex entities. For instance, and as you can see in this screenshot, we're talking about a sales quote, where sales quote is built using a header, which is basically a record explaining to the system, which customer is that sales quote for, what is the date, what is the total amount, and so on and so forth. But then there are also lines, line items that explain to the system which services or which products are we selling. So all of that, that whole construct is a sales quote. It was previously a little bit more complicated to operate on that whole entity. Right now, you can do it in a sequence and access data and both read and write those kind of more complex entities. So it opens up new scenarios where you can create, for instance, sales documents or journal entries and so on. It is quite powerful capability that you have now full access to. A few other changes that we have done to the Power Automate and Power Apps connector. We have some improvements to the templates. As I mentioned, we have some documentation and samples that are right now much more rich and comprehensive, especially covering the new capabilities of Power Automate. We have made some changes, some internal changes to the connector, making it more robust. And we also are removing the preview label from the connector, so it will not be marked as preview in Power Automate and Power Apps UI anymore. You will see that later in the release. So let's talk about this new Automate action. This is the most significant change and something that I will spend a couple of minutes on during this presentation. It allows you to run workflows of your choice, Power Automate workflows or flows, from Business Central, directly from Business Central. You can automate some tasks in this way, maybe simple tasks or maybe tasks that are normally meant to run in a sequence, and let the Power Platform do this boring job for you. We have some samples and templates that you can use, and there will be more and more of those coming throughout the wave. So please have a look at that. What is very important is that now you are able to create or expand those business flows and processes that are specific to your company. Sometimes you need to have something that is very unique, and normally you would have to hire a developer to code that as an extension in Business Central. With this technology, it is much easier for you to build that in-house using your own citizen developer skills, as we call you here. And then, of course, you can connect to various apps or other cloud systems. And that could be both Microsoft systems like Dataverse, Outlook, and SharePoint, and Teams, and many, many more. But also third-party systems. So the connector for connectors for Power Automate and Power Apps, there is like a huge catalog of those. And you can see that you have connectors for DocuSign, Salesforce, SAP. They have connectors to, receive text messages even and WhatsApp messages. So it is actually really quite powerful what you can build and how you can connect those systems using Power Automate. I will only encourage you to invest more time and try to play with Power Automate, because it is actually very powerful. Let's demystify or unbox a little bit this new feature and understand what it means. First of all, this feature is hidden under a feature management flag, as we call it. So you need to go to feature management later in the release when that feature will be available for you. So you have to have version 20.1 of Business Central in order to start using this capability. Then you have to go to feature management and enable this for your company. It will become automatically enabled in October 2022, but for now you have to turn it on to try this new capability. When you do that, you will have an automate group on pages. So in your action bar, you will have additional group, a system group called automate. It is added automatically for you to selected pages, and that is list pages, cart pages, document pages, and so on, that operate on certain tables, right? So they need to have a table behind the page. And when you see that, you can define new flows. So you can, of course, run Power Automate and build your own flows, but you can also run a selected flow directly from Business Central. And there are four important components to that system, how this actually works. So first of all, it is using a special new trigger in Power Automate. Trigger is a component that starts the flow. So when you will be building your flow, you will start using this new trigger for Business Central. And then you can filter those flows so that trigger has some additional filtering capabilities, as you can see here on the screenshot. You can add an environment name or company or even a page ID or table ID, and this way link that flow to your specific page or table. Then Business Central passes some additional context and parameters to Power Automate when the flow is run. So in your flow, in the code of your flow, you can consume those parameters and provide a specific business logic. And then you can also enhance your flow, your Power Automate flow, with some additional user experience or some additional input from the user. And it is really easy to do. Let's go a little bit more in detail into those new capabilities. First of all, the parameters, as I mentioned, right? And filtering. So the filter defines, as I mentioned, the environment, company name, or page or table where specific flow is listed. If you imagine you have several flows and some of them are designed and coded for you by you to work with customer list, and the others are coded to work with items list. So using page ID or table ID, you can actually assign those flows to specific experiences in Business Central. And when Business Central opens a given page, it will look for flows that match those criteria, right? And only display them for you in the specific context. In the same way, you can also filter those flows per an environment or per company. So if you have a sandbox environment and you are just experimenting with those flows and you don't want them to be shown in production, you can filter that easily in that flow, and only when you're ready, switch it to production, and those flows will then show up in production. This is quite powerful. And the other thing is in the parameters that are sent from Business Central to the flow at runtime. So the moment you start a flow, you will get environment name, company name, table ID, and most importantly, system ID, which is an ID of a record that is highlighted. If you opening a list page and you highlight specific entry on that list page, starting the automate action for that list page will send a system ID of that record to Power Automate, and then within your flow, it is relatively easy to take action and kind of act on that specific record. We also have page ID, so that is also allowing you to do some logic based on that, where the user actually started a flow from. And we're also sending a web client URL. So it's actually a complete URL of the web page of Business Central where you started that flow from. So you can imagine a flow, and this is actually an example that we have here on screen, where we are sending an email to someone, processing some data, and we are sending an email with some confirmation and so on. That email actually can include also the URL to the web client, to Business Central web client. So the recipient of that email, your colleague, would see some information that the flow built and sent as an email, but also the URL. If you would like to click on that URL and learn more about that sales order, for instance, or item, sure, you can do it easily that way. And then the next capability is the parameters or the values that you can create in Power Automate. So this is actually a feature of Power Automate itself. We are using that in this system, in this new capability. But you build inputs into Power Automate flows using Power Automate. You have full control over names, tooltips, and some parameters of those input fields. And you also can define specific types. It could be a text field or number, a yes/no answer, an email address, a date, and even a file attachment. So you can attach a file and send it to the flow, and then the flow will take over, right? So imagine you can build additional UI that is linked to Business Central in an easy way. An example that I have here on screen, as you can see, this is a flow that is supposed to answer to this kind of business need. For this particular sample company, they need to have a flow that blocks a specific customer and reports that to internal systems, but also to a specific controller. So there is a person in the company that is a controller, and we can provide the email address of that person. We can attach some documentation that is linked to this case, for instance. We can even set execution date and so on. As you can see, this is just an example. This is not part of the standard Business Central logic. Someone who created this flow has chosen some parameters in Power Automate, and they will just show up in Business Central like this when you start this flow, when you run this flow. And then, of course, those parameters will be passed to the flow. So when you have the business logic there, you can decide what to do with the user input, and you will also have the input that Business Central sends to the flow. That is really, really very powerful and opens up new possibilities for you. The best way to see that is in a demo. Let's do a quick demo of this new capability. I'm in my Business Central environment, and first thing that I need to do is to make sure this feature is enabled. As I mentioned, this feature is only available when you have enabled it in feature management. So as you can see now, I have enabled this for all users, and this feature will be coming to you by default later in 2022. But right now is available for you to try it from version 20.1 of Business Central Online. This is available only in Business Central Online, not in Business Central on-premises. So as we made sure that this feature is enabled, I can go to any list. In this case, I'm going to Customers list, and I can see that I have a new Power Automate action group called Automate. When I open it, it loads my flows that I can run directly from Business Central. Now, you might be asking where they are coming from. So I can also go to Manage Flows and directly go to Power Automate, where I can see those flows that I have defined. As you can see, I have even more than the ones that are linked to Business Central, but the ones that are based on our Business Central trigger will show up later on in Business Central. So let's try this on and see how it works. I will use this flow, which I defined earlier for the demo. this flow actually blocks a customer and sends a message. It's obviously just a simple demo scenario. You might want to build something more advanced and something that is precisely fitted to your business need. But in this case, I'm running this flow, and as you can see, it opens a Power Automate flyout window on a site where I can do some additional inputs. In this case, I have a choice for a reason, and as you can see, I can run this flow, and this flow is right now done, and this customer has been blocked. So you might be thinking, what does this flow do? Let's find out. I will go to my flows again, and we will edit this flow. So as you can see, it takes a record from Business Central, updates it, and then sends an email message and posts a message on Teams. I can actually see that in my Teams channel. There is a special channel that I created for the sake of this demo where my Power Automate flow just posted an update. I can also see that we have sent an email to this customer, precisely as the flow defines it. Let's try to edit it a little bit and add some additional logic. What I would like to show you is how to add some additional inputs. This is actually quite exciting. It's very easy to build. As you can see, the reason input that I created earlier is defined here. I can edit those values and so on, but I can add another one, and let's call it a comment. All right, so the user will be asked for this additional comment, and I can then use this comment in my flow definition here. Let's find it. As you can see, this is coming from my trigger. I can use this comment also in here. Scroll a little bit down. Yeah, and now I can save the flow. Now I can go back to Business Central. Oh, sorry. Let's do it again. Now back in Business Central, let's take this customer and use the flow that we just defined. Now, as you can see, the flow has loaded, and the additional field with the comment is added here as we precisely described. We are sorry. This is, of course, just a demo scenario. Now I will run this flow. This customer is blocked in Business Central. I can also see the new comment was posted on Teams. This is for our internal audience, so our sales team knows that we have blocked this customer. And we also can see that we got another email sent, and the comment that we added is added to the email. So as you can see, editing the flow and adding more interesting scenarios is very, very easy. And then running them directly in Business Central opens up new possibilities for additional business logic adjustments. The next part of this presentation today is we'll talk about Power BI and our integration with Power BI. Also, we start with a little bit of refresher so that we have all components explained. As you know, we have some sample reports in Business Central. You are familiar with this Get Started with Power BI part on your Role Center. When you start that integration, we actually send some sample reports to Power BI system, and then you will have those reports displayed in Business Central. These are just sample reports, so usually what you will do, you will use our connector and you will use Power BI desktop authoring tool that comes together with Power BI, and you will build your own reports or dashboards. We also have some Power BI apps or template apps that are on App Stores. We have currently 3 different apps, and of course you're welcome to download them into your Power BI service and use them as they are. And of course you can also build your own, as I mentioned a moment ago. When you do that, you can embed and see that actual report inside Business Central in the Role Center. You can see that in some lists, we have also lists, parts in lists where you can display a Power BI report. And we actually have documentation explaining how to build specific Power BI reports that fit into that part. And you can also view those reports, dashboards directly in Power BI service. You don't need to actually see them all in Business Central. Sometimes it is better to view the whole dashboard in Power BI. In this release, we have added some new capability to the Power BI service, and that is a capability to read data and refresh data from the read-only database replica. So the concept of this read-only database replica is not new. It has been introduced in Business Central last year. Right now, Power BI connector, our Power BI connector, takes advantage of this capability by default. So in order to get that started, you have to update your Power BI desktop to the March release or later. So this capability has been released in March 2022, update to Power BI desktop. I'm guessing you are updating Power BI desktop automatically, or your Windows machine does it for you automatically. So if you are on this March update or later, you have this new connector already. Now, all reports that you create in Power BI desktop that are created from this March release will already automatically include that capability and refresh data from this read-only replica, which is much more performant, because then the refresh of Power BI reports or dashboards does not interfere with your normal business processes that are running on the standard main database, let's say. And as I said, it's enabled for all new reports that you're building. If you have an old report or dashboard and you would like to update it, the way to do it is to open it in Power BI desktop. So you need to edit the report or dashboard and remove the data source, the data connection, and add the same data connection again. At that point, the Power BI desktop will refresh the connection to the new one. We also have documentation explaining how to do that in a more manual way, and also how to override that. If you, for some reason, would like to still have the data refreshed from the main database, there is a way to do so. So please head to our documentation page and read about that. The next part I would like to talk about is actually a story between Power BI and Excel. So not only Business Central and Power BI, but then Excel. And this is about organization data types in Excel. This is a feature of Microsoft Excel where you have data assigned to specific type. And you can think about the most classic example, data being a text data or number or date. But we have also in Excel some additional data types like geography, stock exchange data, currency values. Now you can add your own data types from Business Central. This is very important for reference data. So for instance, you can imagine that your items catalog becomes a data type in Excel, or your customer list becomes a data type. So then when you working with Excel and adding some data in Excel, editing something in Excel, and you would like Excel to interpret that as customers from Business Central or items from Business Central, you just do it in Excel, and Excel can reach to Business Central via Power BI and extract some additional information about this, this data type. There is a quite comprehensive documentation about how to set it up and how to use it in Excel, because the feature itself is a feature of Microsoft Excel. We're just using and plugging to it. So please head down. There is a QR code and a documentation page that talks about that in detail. But of course, the best way to show you how it works is to show you a little bit of a demo, how to set it up and how to use it. So let's do that. This is my Business Central role center, and I also have an Excel file open. And as you can see in Excel, I have some data types, but nothing related to Business Central. So how should I set it up? I need to go to my Power BI desktop, and my Power BI desktop is connected to Business Central. I already signed in, so it's easier for you to follow. And I get data. I should type Business Central. I find our Business Central connector. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just creating a simple report as normally you would do. I'm selecting my production environment, my company, and then I will choose one of the standard APIs, of course, and let's say I would like to do that for customers. I can load the customers into Power BI desktop. And now what I need to do is to go to my model view. And as you can see, this is my customer table. And that customer table needs to be marked as a featured table. This little setting here allows me to enter some additional description about this particular data set. So I will type, and then I will select the ID, the name of the customer as the column that is key, and that's it. Next thing, I need to publish this to my Power BI service, so I will be using the Publish button. Save the change. Select the workspace. In this case, I'm just selecting my workspace. If you have multiple workspaces, you might want to have a shared workspace for all of your employees, because you would like to have this data set shared among your company. And as you can see, this is now published. So now I will go back to Excel. I will just refresh this file. I need to reload Excel. And if I switch to this data tab, now, as you can see, there is something new. Excel even tells me, hey, there is a new data type from your organization. You can learn more about this and actually learn how to use them. But as you can see, customers from Business Central, our data type is right now here. If I would type a name of a customer and select, this is a customer from Business Central, I'm telling Excel, this field is not a text. It is actually a customer from Business Central. And as you can see, Excel has added the full name of the customer, and I can select on the other fields here, for instance, the city, country, and so on and so forth, and add more and process this data. So if you're thinking about building some reports and you have the data, you have names of your items or names of your customers, and it's very easy right now to pull some additional information that is needed for your specific report, or maybe a sales quote or some additional documents that you are preparing and working in Excel. It allows you to pull that data directly from Business Central, and that data is also refreshed when you refresh the data in Power BI Desktop. That is it. That is all from this demo. Let's switch back to the presentation. Another area where you will see improvements in this release is our connector to Dataverse. It's a virtual tables connector to Dataverse. When you have connected Business Central to Dataverse through that connector, through that virtual tables connector, this capability is explained in detail in our previous launch events and in our documentation online, because this feature itself was released last year. But your Business Central tables become tables in Dataverse, and you can use them in Dataverse almost in the same way as native tables in Dataverse. In this release, we have added data change events to this capability, to this data virtual tables capability, and that opens up the same or similar interactions with Power Automate that you might imagine or that you have seen earlier today. When you use Power Automate, you will have now an ability to use the Dataverse trigger. So if you're building a flow in Power Automate using the Dataverse data change trigger, you can see that you have right now the ability to select the type of event and select the table that is actually Business Central virtual table, and use the event. For instance, in this case, there is a new record, there is a new item. We're getting that new item from Business Central through the virtual table plugin. So it is actually coming from Business Central, but Dataverse thinks that this is their Dataverse native entity. So for you as a developer, as a maker, you treat both the Dataverse virtual tables and the Dataverse native tables in the same way, and you can construct Power Automate flows and Power Apps using a mixture of those tables. What is important is that previously you were not able to act on changes of data that were coming from Business Central through Dataverse virtual tables, and now you can. So it's right now much easier for you to build automation using Dataverse virtual tables in Dataverse. All right, to summarize what we have learned today, we have learned about rich and performant reports in Power BI, how to build them right now with the new connector. I have showed you how to use your citizen developer skills and the tools from Power Platform to enhance Business Central and connect to other systems. And of course, for those of you who are interested in Dataverse, right now you have learned how to natively use those events coming from Business Central in your Dataverse workflows or Dataverse solutions. We have plenty of documentation about Power Platform on our website. Please have a look. We have also learned portal materials or materials or learning material that is published on our Learn portal. So you can explore more and get familiar with Power Automate, Power BI, and so on. And for our partners, we also have a Power Platform group on Yammer, on our Yammer community. So I would also encourage you to have a look at that group if you are a partner. And that will be it from this session in our launch event 2022 Release Wave 1. Thank you very much.